Your father was some military legend, right? Sure, kid. And I'm the head of Special Forces. Officer Reynolds chuckled. The 7-year-old child didn't react. His tiny hands just gripped the military identification pendant more firmly. The final memento of a father taken too early. Visitors in the reception area smiled at the youngster with his fantastical tales. Not one person believed him. Then the entrance doors swung wide. A distinguished brigadier general stood there, medals and commendations shining across his uniform. Everyone stared as he walked not toward reception, not toward the law enforcement personnel, but directly to the child. And he offered him a salute first, if you can imagine. Sometimes honor skips a single lifetime, only to emerge more powerful later. 7-year-old Lucas Bennett waited patiently in the crowded police headquarters. His small hands clutched firmly around the weathered military identification tag suspended from his neck. The overhead fluorescent bulbs hummed, creating stark shadows throughout the space filled with personnel and visitors. His mother, Andrea, was at the main counter, her voice unsteady as she documented the burglary at their home. "They stole our television, my computer, but thankfully Lucas was in class," she explained. The young boy seemed unconcerned with their conversation. His attention remained completely focused on the pendant, his thumb repeatedly tracing the raised lettering. Officer Reynolds, a heavy-set man with military-style hair and 2 decades with the department, rested against the desk. His gaze narrowed as he noticed the child's complete absorption with the metal tag. "What have you got there, buddy?" he questioned, his voice carrying across the waiting space. Lucas glanced up, his expression uncommonly serious for someone so young. "It belonged to my dad," he answered quietly. "He served in the military. A hero, my mom always says." Officer Reynolds scoffed, sharing a knowing look with the receptionist. "Kid, every man who ever wore boots and got a haircut claims that. You wouldn't believe how many heroes we hear about." Several onlookers smirked. The desk clerk nodded with a conspiratorial smile. Lucas remained silent. He simply held the pendant tighter, his fingers whitening around it. "Know his position, son?" Reynolds pressed, leaning closer. "Bet you don't even know which branch he served with." "Command Sergeant Major," Lucas responded without pause. "Command Sergeant Major Bennett. He rescued people." Reynolds laughed openly this time. "Oh, I'm sure he did. Probably saw that in some movie. Command Sergeant Major, that's quite senior. Not the type who'd leave his kid with just a dog tag." Lucas didn't weep. He didn't flee. He merely lowered his gaze to the pendant, his expression showing a quiet composure that seemed inappropriate for a 7-year-old. Andrea had turned from the counter, her paperwork forgotten, her face reddened with frustration and humiliation as she heard the officer's derisive tone. The hurt in her expression was unmistakable. A grieving spouse forced to watch her husband's memory diminish before their child. "Lucas," she said gently, ignoring the officer. "Come sit over here, sweetheart." The boy followed her to the seating area, his posture unwavering, the identification tag still gripped in his small hand, like the precious item it truly was. The conversation ended as suddenly as a light extinguished. Officer Reynolds returned to his documentation, occasionally glancing toward the boy with an expression combining amusement and slight remorse. The damage was done. Lucas sat silently beside his mother, gaze downward, no longer engaging with anyone present. Andrea wrapped her arm around him, whispering something that made him nod, though his expression remained unchanged. What everyone overlooked was the maintenance worker in the corridor, an older individual with rough hands and a noticeable limp, who had paused his cleaning to listen. His gaze lingered on the boy, then hardened when looking at Officer Reynolds. Without comment, the custodian stepped outside, retrieving an outdated mobile phone from his pocket. This maintenance worker wasn't an ordinary caretaker. Former Staff Sergeant Wilson had completed 2 deployments before accepting this unassuming position at the station, and when he heard the name Bennett spoken so dismissively, something triggered his recollection. He dialed a number from memory. "General, it's Wilson. I'm working at the downtown 4th Precinct. There's something you should know." Inside, Andrea completed the paperwork, keeping Lucas close as the desk officer processed their statement. Officer Reynolds had moved on to another matter, already dismissing the boy with the identification tag and the story he'd so readily disregarded. "We'll dispatch someone tomorrow to photograph the scene," the desk officer explained, providing Andrea with a copy of the report. "Please avoid touching anything else that might retain fingerprints." Andrea acknowledged this, gathering her belongings. "Thank you. Let's go, Lucas." Before they could rise, the main entrance opened with deliberate authority. The sound cut through the station's ambient noise, drawing everyone's attention toward the doorway. A brigadier general in formal dress uniform stood framed in the entrance, decorations and medals adorning his chest, silver stars gleaming on his shoulders. His bearing was impeccably straight, his expression unreadable beneath his service cap. Complete silence fell. Even telephone ringtones seemed to cease. The general surveyed the room, his gaze passing over personnel and civilians without recognition. Then his eyes found Lucas. Without hesitation, he walked directly toward the boy, his footsteps resonating on the floor. He halted precisely 3 feet from where Lucas sat, assumed a position of attention, and delivered a flawless military salute. "Young man," he stated, his voice resonating through the silent room, "Command Sergeant Major James Bennett was my instructor, my superior, and my personal hero." Lucas gazed upward, his small hand still clutching the identification tag. Slowly, uncertainly, he stood. Officer Reynolds had frozen at his workspace, pen suspended above half-finished documents, unable to meet the child's gaze. General Mitchell, the uniformed visitor, introduced himself, extending his hand to Lucas after completing his salute. "Your father preserved my life, son." Andrea's eyes welled with tears as she watched her son shake the general's hand with solemn dignity. "These individuals might not recognize your father's name," General Mitchell continued, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "But at Camp Edwards, at military headquarters, and at installations across 3 continents, no one mentions that name without standing more attentively." Officer Reynolds shifted uncomfortably at his desk, suddenly intensely focused on his paperwork. The desk officer, more observant than most, noticed something unusual, genuine embarrassment crossing the veteran officer's expression. "When did you lose him, son?" the general inquired, his tone gentler. "2 years ago, sir," Lucas answered. "Mom says he's watching over us." "Without question," General Mitchell affirmed. "Men of your father's caliber never truly depart." The general turned slightly, his gaze sweeping across the room until it settled on Officer Reynolds. He didn't address him directly. He didn't need to. The silent reproach in his expression communicated everything necessary. "If you've ever been ridiculed for speaking truth, continue speaking." Comment: "Stand proudly if you believe narratives like this deserve recognition." General Mitchell knelt beside Lucas, bringing himself to the child's eye level. This gesture alone, a high-ranking officer kneeling before a young boy, sent ripples through the observing crowd. "Your dad didn't merely serve, Lucas. He molded soldiers, rescued personnel, and shaped who I am today," the general stated, his voice conveying both authority and something more profound: veneration. He reached inside his uniform jacket and withdrew a carefully preserved photograph. Its edges were softened from years of handling. With measured movements, he unfolded it on the bench between them. "2nd Battalion Special Operations Training, Camp Edwards, 2015, he explained. The image showed 30 men in formation, serious expressions facing the camera, and there, prominently positioned, with insignia displaying his rank, stood a man whose features Lucas had clearly inherited: Command Sergeant Major James Bennett. Lucas touched the photograph with trembling fingers, as if he might somehow reach through the image and connect with his father again. "That's him," he whispered. "Indeed," the general confirmed. "The same man commemorated on your tag. The same individual who carried me half a mile through training terrain after an explosion that should have claimed both our lives." General Mitchell rose, addressing the suddenly attentive audience. His voice adopted the commanding tone that had directed personnel in conflict zones. "Command Sergeant Major Bennett refused evacuation until every trainee was accounted for. Declined medical attention until I was stabilized. You mocked his son. His gaze found Officer Reynolds, who seemed to diminish in his chair. But that man trained warriors who now wear stars on their shoulders. General Harrison at Strategic Command, Bennett's student, Colonel Rodriguez leading the Mountain Division. Bennett taught him leadership. Complete silence had descended upon the station. One of the junior officers, recently graduated from the academy, rose from his desk and offered a respectful salute toward Lucas. Officer Reynolds had visibly paled. His earlier confidence had disappeared completely. "I wasn't aware," he muttered, barely audible. "You didn't inquire," General Mitchell responded flatly. "You presumed, the worst error anyone with authority can commit." The moment remained suspended, tense with unspoken rebuke, until interrupted by a door opening across the room. The police commander emerged, his expression serious as he assessed the situation. "I've been monitoring the situation from my office," he stated, approaching the group. His movement was measured and purposeful, the walk of someone who had reached a conclusion. He stopped before Lucas and extended his hand. "Lucas, I'm Commander Sullivan. I would be honored if you would visit our training facility someday. Show them what dignity looks like when faced with disrespect. Demonstrate what your father clearly taught the general here." Lucas shook the commander's hand with the same composure he had displayed throughout the ordeal. "Command Sergeant Major Bennett's service history appeared on my screen," the commander continued, acknowledging General Mitchell with professional respect. 23 years of service, Bronze Star with Valor, Distinguished Service Medal, 3 commendations for exceptional instruction performance across 2 decades. He turned to address Officer Reynolds directly. "Officer, report to my office immediately." As Reynolds rose unsteadily to comply, the commander leaned toward Lucas. "Your father's achievements speak volumes, but what communicates even more powerfully is how his son conducts himself when challenged. He would feel immense pride today, son." Andrea, who had remained quiet throughout the exchange, finally spoke. "He always does, Commander. Lucas hears his guidance every day." General Mitchell nodded with understanding. "The finest leaders never cease providing direction, even after they're gone. Their example becomes the standing guidance for everyone who knew them." The commander straightened and addressed his personnel. "Let this serve as instruction to everyone wearing a badge in this station. We assist all citizens, particularly families of those who served alongside us in different uniforms." As the impromptu gathering dispersed, General Mitchell placed a business card in Andrea's hand. "The Veterans Family Support Foundation assists families like yours," he explained quietly. "Contact that number. Mention my referral. Your husband's brothers and sisters in arms support their own." 1 week later, the department issued a formal apology to the Bennett family. The correspondence, bearing Commander Sullivan's signature, acknowledged the disrespect shown to both Lucas and the memory of Command Sergeant Major Bennett. Officer Reynolds was reassigned from desk duties to community engagement. The position included mandatory veteran sensitivity training at the Regional Veterans Hospital. His initial assignment involved organizing a memorial exhibition for fallen service members in the station lobby. When the display was unveiled the following month, a framed photograph of Command Sergeant Major James Bennett occupied the prominent position. Beneath it, a simple inscription read, "He taught warriors to lead and leaders to serve." Lucas attended the dedication ceremony, his father's identification tag still hanging around his neck. Officers who had never met him now greeted him by name, some even improving their posture as he passed. General Mitchell attended as well, now a regular visitor to the Bennett household, sharing stories about their father that caused Andrea to both laugh and cry. He had become something of a mentor to Lucas, a living connection to the father the boy was too young to fully remember. Before departing the ceremony, Lucas paused before his father's photograph. Dozens of officers and staff watched respectfully as the boy looked up at his father's image. "My dad wasn't boastful," Lucas said, his voice small but distinct in the hushed room. "He didn't need to be." The profound simplicity of those words resonated throughout the station. Long after the ceremony concluded, Commander Sullivan implemented a new training component at the academy. Every recruit now studies a brief biography of Command Sergeant Major Bennett before graduation. a reminder that respect transcends uniform colors or agency emblems. Officer Reynolds, surprisingly to many, became the program's most dedicated champion. I learned through experience, he would tell new officers. Some heroes don't wear capes or carry badges, and sometimes the most courageous person present might be 7 years old. Each Veterans Day, a chair remains empty during the station briefing, an identification tag hanging from its back. The tag, polished to a brilliant shine, carries a simple message engraved beneath the official military information. For the quiet ones who showed us how to stand. And in the Bennett household, Lucas continues to cherish his father's original identification tags, not merely as his connection to a father departed too soon, but as a reminder that some legacies speak more powerfully than words ever could. If this story touched your heart, please follow Valor Stories to honor those whose quiet sacrifice deserves our deepest respect and whose memory lives on in the children who carry their legacy forward.